Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Really awesome seeing you guys again. We haven't exactly taken a break from engraving, but it's just been a wild ride. I've enjoyed just the whole process of building my truck and going and traveling and just enjoying life in general. And it's been really awesome meeting awesome new friends and just seeing the UK from a different perspective, you know, not being stuck in my workshop all the time doing engraving. It's nice to, you know, taste life for what it is and enjoying it from a different point of view. But the great thing about that is that with engraving, you can apply it and take it with you wherever you go, which is awesome. However, you do need to learn the fundamental building blocks, and that's kind of what this video is all about today, is about those building blocks to get you started and get you going and allow you to practice these tips and apply them when you do your practice pieces and maybe your pieces that you're doing for your friends, your family, or even customers. But just before we go in there, I've just like to just point out something that I find a lot within the industry, and I found it myself first coming into the industry. I had thousands of questions that were unanswered, and I was trying to find the answers. And what you'll find is when new artists come in, they ask so many different questions to artists and things like that. And a lot of the time, it feels like you're getting the cold shoulder from the artist, but you need to understand that this craft is thousands and thousands of years old. There are not many craftsmen. There never has been many craftsmen from engraving. It is a very particular type of art form. It's very niche, and 0.0001% of the population will actually take it up and see it through. So there's a very small amount of you that will, you know, see this through for the years to come, and that is the facts. It is not something nice to be able to jump into and just try, and, you know, absolutely. And this is kind of why I create these videos, is to give everybody the opportunity to, you know, give it a taste and see what it's like. And for those of you who are really passionate and really want to get into this, these are great videos for you to, you know, have those fundamental building blocks, you know, for you to create your own particular style. Because as you can imagine, that how do people go from, you know, being a beginner to becoming a pro? It is like an apprentice and a master. It's exactly the same process. But what you'll find is you may find yourself copying a particular type of artist because their art form and their style, and it really it resonates with yourself, and which is great. Basically, copying is the greatest form of flattery. However, what I will say is have the respect and have the patience and the discipline for this art form, because that's what it takes to really grow in this art form and apply it and be able to apply it to many different genres. You have to have, the big emphasis on a word is time. You need to have and take the time and have the patience to apply this. So it's all about practice, discipline, and keep that enthusiasm alive and apply it to, you know, your different art forms or your different materials. So I have I have an affinity for dark arts. I really like it. I find it very, you know, I love the expression of dark arts. That's who I am, and I really enjoy doing that kind of thing. And I've been able to apply it to many different materials and to my vehicle, to my rims and bikes and you name it, which is really cool. So this is what I really enjoy about this art form. You can go away and do other things, you come back to it, you can always come back to it and apply it to different things, and you just have the ability to make things, something that's cool, to make something that's freaking awesome, because of, you know, what you can apply in terms of an art form to it. So my message for all you beginners out there is have the respect and the patience with artists. They have been doing this for a very long time, and if it feels like they're giving you the cold shoulder, they're not exactly giving you the cold shoulder. You need to have the respect that they've been doing this for many years to get where they are, and it's about proving yourself to yourself in a degree. So learning the fundamental points is the key, and once you've got that, you'll find yourself in a position you don't really need to ask questions anymore, because you, through starting the engraving learning these principles and applying them, you'll find yourself growing naturally, learning how materials react at different speeds, with different textures, different materials. It all basically fall into place, which is great. And you'll find yourself creating your own style and be able to move forward with what you feel and what you really resonate with yourself. So let's get straight into it. But before we do, what do we need? So all I'm working with today is just an aluminium sheet. It's very, very simple. It's nice and soft. It's forgiving. It doesn't matter what you start off with today. The same particular principles will apply. But if you want to start with aluminium, it will be beneficial because I'll be using a lot of cutting burrs today. So aluminium doesn't have to be black. It's just black. So it is. You can see the different textures. It's contrasty, and it's much more forgiving, and it's easier to identify different textures and at different speeds, etc. with different burrs, all that kind of. There's so many different variables. So one thing that you'll start learning as you go. Get yourself a decent sort of pencil. So I've got a mechanical pencil here with I think it's a 1.3 millimeter lead. So it's quite a dark lead. All we're going to do is sort of just do simple drawing on here. You don't have to use a pencil, whatever works for you. You can just do this all freehand if you like. It's totally up to you. And then obviously the most important thing is a Dremel of some sort, or a rotary tool. Doesn't have to be a Dremel. But try and get yourself something that has a flex shaft, something that's nice and comfortable. And then have a variety of different burrs with you, so you can practice and see how the different sizes react at different speeds with the material. So give yourself a rotary tool with a flex shaft. I've always used Dremels, readily available and good products to buy, and they have thousands different of attachments and burrs and all that kind of stuff. So and that's basically all we need. If you would like to get some headphones to really sort of separate yourself and help you focus, then do so. I really recommend that. It's one thing about engraving, you'll find there's a lot of noise, so get yourself into a nice comfortable headspace, and that is another key thing for a lot of engravers, is you need to be comfortable. If you find yourself really tensed up, you're going to struggle with very basic things. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. Okay, so now we've got our workpiece, or our material that we've chosen to work with today. Like previously mentioned, this is a sheet of aluminium. It doesn't have to be black. It can be clear, whatever it is, or silver. This is a black painted one, so I mean both sides are black. This is the protective piece, so this is quite clean underneath here. We'll come a bit later. So just work on this sort of dirty surface at the moment. So nice flat surface. You've obviously got your Dremel with the flex shaft. So what we'll do is we'll focus on a couple of easy things, such as a couple of straight lines. I'll talk you through it. What I do recommend is getting yourself some cut lube, easily and very cheap to buy. All this is a wax, and it'll lubricate your burr. So it'll keep it cool and keep the lubrication. So when it cuts through steel, it gives it a nice sort of clean cut. That's what you're aiming for, as clean as possible, because you'll find that if it's very dry and it's overheating, it leaves a lot of sort of jitter marks or anything like that with the rotary tool. One thing is super important is make sure you have some form of protective eyewear. You're working with a rotary tool. This kicks up a lot of swarf, so be careful. It's caught me out a couple of times, and I've found myself at NER getting metal shavings basically dug out of my eyeball, which is not cool. Okay, so safety side of things, decent pencil, like previously mentioned. Got yourself a ruler. We're going to do some straight lines here, how we can follow those, and then keep a selection of burrs at hand, so you can basically practice with different sizes. So I keep one of these divider sort of little boxes, and I keep all my burrs in their respective sizes. Keep that in there. It's just nice to have everything organized, and you can basically just jump and you know exactly where to find your particular size that you're after today. So I think the one we're using today is a 107. I will get a couple more out just to show you the differences. another one here. So one at 5 is one of my favorites. Here is another one I find really, really handy, and this is great for textures. Okay, so we've got a variety of different sizes here of burrs. I'll just lay them out here. We'll get a couple of close-ups and we'll just talk through them. And we'll understand what their functions are and what I've kind of applied them to for this particular sort of art form. Okay, so first you've got your large sort of cutting burr. If you have a look, it's got really, really large blades. If you can see, that's quite large, a really nice ball, large ball. This is great for removing a lot of material out of, you know, large pieces. So that's really good for getting the heavy duty material out of the way. And then as it basically just goes smaller from there. You just get really, really smaller, same style, same cutting size, and they get smaller and smaller and smaller. And you might find yourself with someone's cutting the grass. You might find yourself having different length burrs. This is obviously an aftermarket burr, not from Dremel itself, but very different, from a different company. And I've been trying their burrs out, and they make some really nice burrs. Slightly thinner shaft, so just bear that in mind. This is a 2.4mm shaft, so you will need the chuck for that attachment to get that burr to work. You will need to use this chuck. And then last but not least is probably one of my favorite burrs to use, especially with very detailed texturing. If you're working on large pieces, it is a very, very, very small head, and it's great for using on, you know, big portraits and very, very small materials, and be able to still deliver precision detail. This gives you that flexibility. So with this, you've got to be very, very patient and take your time with this and keep this as cool as possible. So the smaller it is, the faster it's going to heat up. So this is where the cutting loop comes into play, keeps your burrs cool and keeps them cutting nice and clean. Okay, so simple lines we're going to do. So I've just got a straight edge here. We're just going to do simple straight lines up the material. Give yourself a decent amount of spacing. Doesn't have to be perfect. This is just basic techniques. You can follow along. You can do it at your own leisurely pace if you so wish. Okay. So a decent line, you'll come across, you know, straight lines. The thing is with if you are basically engraving a particular type of picture, you will never have, you know, super straight lines like this unless you're doing a really large logo or anything like that. So, but it will still teach you the fundamental basics that you need to know. What you will find is sometimes it works better to do a freehand line. I mean, you can do, let's do sort of a wavy line. Let's do that. Let's give that a shot. Let's see how we do with that. Let's do a couple of those. That's a good test. Another good test is lettering, especially lettering that either whatever you call cursive or joined up writing. But if you do, an S is a very, very tricky letter to do. Let's do an S, and let's do a C, and then another very, very tricky one is an O or a 0. Very, very tricky to do, or circle. Okay, and then we'll save a space for doing stippling and how we will achieve stippling. And I'll show you another tool that will apply to the stippling process that is really, really quite nice, and it adds different depths of textures and things like that. Okay, so eyewear on, and remember, get yourself nice and comfortable. Make sure you are completely comfortable with what you're doing, and let's use the Let's change this one out for a fresh burr. And what you find as you start doing engraving and when you start doing a lot of pieces for either yourself or your clients or your own home projects, the first half an hour of engraving is really awesome. You get beautiful clean lines and everything is really going well, and then you'll find that your lines start really lacking definition, and that is down to obviously lubrication, and the sharpness of your burr is starting to dull. So just keep that in mind. Keep that burr nice and sharp for as long as you can, and that also comes down to applying enough pressure with your hand. So if you put too much pressure down with your hand, you'll find yourself digging into the material too deeply. You'll find yourself fighting the tool. So keep that in mind. When you lubricate your burr, you don't have to stop. I'll show you that in a second. And then another thing is the rotary tool. Every rotary tool, hence the word, it spins in a particular type of direction. Okay, what we want to do is we don't want to fight that direction. We want to go with it, but we want to be able to drive it and control it as much as we can. So all I've done with my flex shaft, Jay, if you're probably wondering, is I've added some foam on here just to make things comfortable, because I found myself engraving for hours and hours and hours on end, and my fingertips started going really numb, and that's a sign of you need to take a break. But things to make yourself comfortable is get yourself a nice little foam pad. You can get some larger ones or smaller ones, whatever you prefer. I like to have a precision sort of feel to my Dremel as much as I can. And remember to get yourself nice and comfortable. So you don't want to be fighting the flex shaft in any way. It needs to be nice and loose and comfortable. So I have mine attached to a workstation. I'll show you that. And that workstation is great. It gives you the ability to do other bits and pieces that you'd like to get done, like drilling and grinding and sharpening. Make sure the stand that your Dremel is hanging on is nice and high, and you not find yourself fighting your flex shaft and it's getting hooked on things on your table. It needs to be nice and free, nice and relaxed. It's all about being comfortable. Okay, you're just about to start. So what I'm going to do to start in this process, I've got my burr that's attached, nice and comfortable. I'm nice in a comfortable position. I'm going to set my speed on my Dremel to 20, which is 20,000 RPM, and we'll see. That's kind of, for myself, I find that a very comfortable setting, nice in-between setting, and you can apply that to many different types of materials, which I have found quite useful in my own opinion, through my sort of experience with different types of materials. It's a really nice comfortable speed. So we'll start at 20,000, and you can start at any speed you like. You can take it all the way up to the top if you'd like. Do whatever makes you happy, and then see. But what I do encourage is, as you're doing your lines and bits and pieces, is change the speed, change it up and see how it works. Do check the low settings and how that affects and how that reacts to pressure when you're applying pressure to the material. And the faster it is, it's more forgiving on the pressure, but it's all about controlling your piece, because you've got a spinning burr on the front here and it wants to run away from you. So it's controlling that speed and being able to manipulate the Dremel in a particular way and get it to do exactly what you want it to do. Right, so let's get it started. So you could obviously hear that noise. Get yourself a couple of headphones, chuck that in, listen to some music, and just do the basic things what we're doing today. So when you're doing your lubrication of your burr, what you want to do is start your Dremel, and all you're doing is just dipping it straight into your wax while it's on, and then away you go. So you don't have to stop start every 5 minutes to lubricate your burr. Get yourself nice and comfortable, nice position, and we're going to follow this straight line here. As you can see, quite noisy when you start applying the burr to the material. But from there, we can clearly see a really nice straight line, which we've done there. On closer inspection, I'll give you a couple of close-up shots of this. You can see it's not 100% perfect, but it is a really, really good line to get your art started and get it applied to your material. And there's always time to come back, use a smaller burr, and you just go in and you just neaten up the lines. If there's any sort of little ridges that you want to get rid of, if you really want clean, crisp lines, there's another way of doing it. You either come back with the same size burr or come with a slightly smaller one and then just go over it again and then just give it a nice sort of clean finish. But make sure when you use another burr, either a smaller size, and when you start applying and you're trying to level that out or get it nice and straight, make sure it doesn't leave a different texture, because what you'll find is you'll find differences throughout your piece with the type of texture this is left compared to the type of texture a smaller burr might leave. But you might apply a little bit more pressure, so just bear those little things in mind. But that'll all come into play later. So we've done a straight line now. Let's have a look at how we tackle a nice wavy line, and just watch and how I move my material around. What you'll find is this is what I do a lot. I don't move my whole body around the piece. I just keep myself nice and comfortable, and then I just manipulate the piece where I need it to be, so I'm nice and comfortable, so I can apply those nice straight lines or those round edges wherever I need to. And again, before we start any new fresh line, we'll always lubricate up. Okay, so as you can see, very, very similar, but there still are slight irregularities. Just bear in mind this was obviously drawn by hand, so it's not a perfect wavy line, but it shows you just how I stop and start my Dremel in different lines, and how I basically pick up from the next line, move across, move the piece, pick up the next line. I'm always moving it because I'm comfortable, and I'll move the material where I need it to be. Okay. However, that might not always be the case. You might have a really large piece that you're working with, either like if you're engraving on a bumper or on a car or a rim or something like that. But you will find yourself moving your body around into a comfortable position, because that is key. Is you need to be comfortable and nice and relaxed. So during that process, you might have noticed that it was nice and controlled lines. Obviously that takes a lot of practice, and just bearing in mind the amount of pressure I was applying. It was very, very light pressure. You can just feel the cut into the steel there, and it's just visible there. You can feel that. And what we'll do is we'll do another straight line. We'll apply a little bit more pressure, and we'll see how this burr reacts to that, and see where we go from there. Okay, hopefully you should see a difference in thickness of the line. So with the first line we created with a little bit less pressure, it was a lot sort of cleaner, finer line, and the more pressure we apply, you can feel it's a lot deeper. Nice deep rut there, but it's a lot thicker or a lot wider line. So it's a nice way of texturing or just identifying a certain side of the image, or just making it nice and bold, is by adding a lot more pressure. But what you probably did notice in the video is that I applied lube several times through that process, and what you need to just bear in mind that this will always heat up. Obviously you're rubbing metal on metal. It's like an engine, a piston in an engine. It needs to be lubricated to keep it cool and keep it running nice and smoothly. So apply those same principles, and what you'll find is as you lubricate, it'll be nice and smooth and it'll start drying out. You'll feel that within your burr, and you can feel it in the material and how the material is reacting. Okay, so let's move on to something a little bit more complicated, like an S, and see how I break that down, and we'll do the C and the O straight after that. Okay, so you can see the difference and how I broke up the O into various little sectors or little quarters, along with the C. Same sort of principle applied. It's basically a C. The way I see it is a half O or a 0, and I just use the same principles going around the circle. So, and you'll be able to apply some pretty decent lettering. Again, so take your time with it, and like I mentioned before, you might need to go over it with the same burr, but again, take your time. And then you probably would have noticed throughout the lines that we've been doing is when I come back and basically carry on from another line, I pick up that line, apply a little bit of pressure just so I know it's in the rut, and then off I go and I apply the same amount of pressure. So that'll come in time, you'll learn all that, so don't worry too much about that. If you find yourself comfortable enough to do longer lines and longer stretches, by all means do that. So what we'll do, let's demonstrate if we can, without stopping, as much as we can, just see how long we can push and how accurate it becomes if we just do one long. Okay, so what we demonstrated there was a lack of movement of the material. So previously I used to move the material around to get nice straight lines. So what you'll see with the lack of movement of the material, you have different textures within the same line. So just bear that in mind. It's not always a bad thing. It might work in your favor, but you will find on the textures where you're moving and the same points is here. Zoom that into you. So you'll find the same sort of area there and there. They have very similar jagged edges on the back ends, whereas the front leading edge, which is this edge here, that front leading edge is always got a beautiful, clean, crisp line. So just bear that in mind. That's another little thing to keep into mind, that front edge of your burr is the clean leading edge, whereas the back edge is the more aggressive, more sort of, it leaves a lot of jagged edges. Okay, so if you want a really nice straight crisp line all the way throughout, it might be worth just spinning it around the opposite direction and just go over it very lightly, and you'll have a very crisp line. Okay, so the next item I want to sort of touch on is stippling. Now stippling is something that adds a lot of depth and texture to different materials and different art pieces. It really makes things pop, gives them a different dimension, and it's a really, really cool little texture to learn and to get under your belt. It's slightly tricky to get into, but once you get into it and you've got the knack, it is pretty much plain sailing from there. So what I'll show you is how to do it with a rotary tool first. Then we're going to get a different tool, and I'll show you the different type of texture that leaves behind, and let your own curiosity take you on a wild ride with the different textures. So again, always lubing up. Now let's give you a closer look. See how nice and close those stipples are. Now that is kind of what you want to be aiming for. Your stipples nice and bunched up, very, very tightly grouped dots or stipples, where you want to call them, very, very tight, and it gives you a really nice, beautiful texture all the way throughout the piece, which is quite this is what you're aiming for when you start doing a piece. So I'll show you a very good example here. This is a bottle I did for myself quite some time ago, and this is the type of texture what you can create with a stippling effect. Beautiful texture, and you can really define different, and in contrast, obviously the textures on the same material, but as you can see there, it comes out stunning, really, really beautiful the way it comes out. And another piece we did, this is obviously another piece I did for myself. Instead of using lines, we use stipples here, and again you can see just how it makes everything really pop. Nice sort of tiki head there. Really, really cool texture to learn. But what you'll see here, if you look closely, is that the stipples on this particular piece are not as closely bunched up as my most recent pieces. So this is an indication of, this is one of the earlier pieces that I did, but it still gives you a great effect. But if you want to really make things jump, you really want to make sure that those stipples are nice and close together. So what you'll find with doing stippling is all you've got to do is maintain control of your burr, and you're almost basically pulling it back on yourself towards your body. And what that'll do is just keep it locked in the same rut, and then all you're doing is just adding slightly more and more pressure, and it'll give you the dot that you wanted to do. And you'll get your depth, and you'll keep doing that, and just do it lightly at first, just to kind of feel what the burr is doing, and then just lock in position and put it slightly back towards your body. And then you'll find it'll give you really, really nice clean cuts within the material. Okay, let me dig out another tool and I'll show you what that does as well. Right, the tool, you've probably seen this before if you type in Google, engraver, this is probably the most common tool that you'll find on Google, is this Dremel engraver here. Now, I didn't originally start with this. I saw this and I didn't really know what to do with it, but I kind of wanted to give the rotary Dremel a go before I looked at this. Now this is a tool that shouldn't be underestimated, and is a nice little tool to have in your arsenal to give yourself a different form of textures throughout your work pieces. So if you're doing a similar texture, a stippling texture to this bottle cap here, So you've applied your stipples around there, but you want to add another dimension of shading, or if you want to flare out the shading of the crown ever so slightly just around the edges, just so it fades into the larger stipples, then that's when something like this comes into play. Or if you've got 3 different textures that you've got in mind that you would like to apply. So if you're doing a portrait of some sort, and there's a couple of greys and blacks and different types of sort of contrasting colors, this is a good way of using different textures to apply and get that image to really come alive. So very simple tool to use. It's just got your on and off switch. You've got your 5 different settings for your speed of how this little tip works. I haven't really looked into the different types of tips you can get for this. The only ones that I'm aware is of this sort of normal sort of cone shape, or the point that you get. But I'm sure there's other variables you can get. You can change the shape of this and give yourself a different texture altogether. So let's demonstrate how, in terms of stippling, how different this tool reacts to this material around the stippling. Right. Okay, so there is a very clear difference in this particular type of texture. So all you're really doing there is creating very small little divots on the texture, or on the surface of the material. So you can see obviously how stippling is far more superior in this particular setting in terms of a black painted surface. So where this really comes into play is with non-painted surfaces, such as polished aluminiums, things like that. This is where you'll really see the difference. So this is a good representation of how this tool doesn't really have that much of a good effect if you are looking for a nice clean stipple. However, if you're looking for a sort of a grey shade, this is kind of what this will offer. So I kept the tool nice and close, and sort of nice close grouping, just to show you what it looked like around the stippling. But if you kind of lengthen out, you'll see how it reacts to the material. This tool is quite good at doing freehand writing on materials. I'll just quickly demonstrate that. You can definitely feel the difference in material now, and how that's really dug into the material compared to the burrs. It's really defined. Okay, so it just shows you how quick and easy it is to actually do some writing on there. you can really feel how deep that's dug into the material, which is quite nice. If you're doing something simple, just a dog tag for your, for your pets, or something simple, maybe on a piece of jewelry or plaque, this is where this tool really comes into play. So it has its place within the engraving stuff, and so this is how we understand and where these particular tools come into play and where you can apply them in different settings. Okay, before, I just want to do a couple more lines just to show you the differences. So I'm going to do another straight line here, but this time I'm going to pull the Dremel towards myself. I want to show you and demonstrate how the tool reacts to this. And this is where a lot of material gets removed. You find it's a lot tougher to actually control the tool. This is where your safety glasses need to be worn at all times, or I say it needs to be worn at all times when you're working with obviously metal materials. And then we'll just use a nice smaller burr like a 106, and we'll just give you a nice sort of straight line just so we can compare the lines. So actually, thinking of that, I'll move I'll draw this line here as pulling back myself, and I'll do the nice thin line there so we can see the differences in thicknesses. And then this line here will show you what it's like to pull the Dremel towards yourself instead of flowing or running with the tool itself. Hopefully you could see in the video there that how the tool was reacting. There was a lot of movement in the burr. It was jumping a lot. It wasn't nice, sort of clean, controlled. You'll also see the physical texture itself. It is very sort of rutted and jagged, whereas the other lines are a lot cleaner, a lot smoother. But it is deeper. But if you do control this a lot better, you can probably go over this, go in the opposite direction if you want to gain that depth. But this does take some time, basically pulling it towards yourself to master. But again, I wouldn't recommend doing it this way. I'd always recommend moving with the tool, as you fighting the tool a lot less in that sort of setting. So let's change the burr now. Let's change it to a 106, and let's show you how nice and fine lines you can do it. Let's get one of the Dremel 106s. So another thing I tell my students as well, is a good thing to point out is where to set your burr depth. Okay, so the burr depth meaning is obviously how much your burr is protruding out from your chuck. Now that is down to personal preference. You might have really large hands and you need to reach in to the work surface, or you've got really smaller hands, or you want to get really close up to your work. It's dependent on what is comfortable to you, and that's like I keep referring to. You need to be as comfortable as possible. So I do like a little bit of a length sticking out from my burr. That's quite a comfortable length for myself. It just means that I'm in a nice comfortable position. I don't have to reach in with my Dremel and get it really close like a pen, whereas your fingers are really close to the tip and you're obviously writing. So I found this a lot more comfortable, and I'm not fighting my flex shaft. Right, let's do a nice thin line. Okay, so now you can see the clear differences there. You've got a really nice thin clean line. We've added a lot more pressure on there, and that was our first line we did, which was nice and relaxed. Just a nice straight line there. So every burr has its place, as you can see. The smaller burrs are very, very nice for using and using for detail. And then using the same principles with the different size of burrs, you can use to do your sort of wavy lines, do your lettering. And you can even, with the smaller burr, you can do some forms of writing. So with a burr, it's just mastering when you're pulling it back on itself, you're applying a lot less pressure than it is going away from yourself. That is one of the key tips that I can give you for if you are going to write with just the rotary tool itself. It's all about the different types of pressures. So applying a pressure one way won't mean it's the same pressure coming back the opposite way, because you're basically fighting the material on your way back. So if you got this far in the video, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate the support. If you're new here, hopefully I've earned your subscription. What you'll really find with the videos that I create on my channel is they are very informative and very information rich. I try and do a memory dump in a particular video as much as I can. So you need to watch the video from start to finish just to get all the information you want from there. It's no good me putting up 20 different videos with a little bit of snippets of information. It's no good to anybody. So I find it much more useful to yourselves and to myself is basically doing as much information as I can into a single video, not too long, gets to the point, and obviously delivers the information that you guys are after. Just to summarize what we've done today is we've done obviously basic line work, showed you how the different pressures react with the material on obviously different burrs, and how the lines react when you're pulling it towards yourself. We showed you a different size of line and how that looks in terms of the other different sizes and different pressures. We did wavy lines and how that is sort of broken down into several sort of stages, and obviously doing your lettering. We had a look at that. Stippling is another one that is really, really nice to add to any sort of form of work and texture, and add a nice new sort of bold, really make the image jump off the surface of the material, which is quite nice. That's what we did there. And then the Dremel engraver was another thing that we added in there. And what you'll find is that with the Dremel tools, they all have their place along with the burrs and stuff within the work you create. So when you create your unique style, you'll find yourself using different tools in different places to add different textures and dimensions to your artwork. Another key thing, or actually two, number one is always lubricate your burr as much as you can, so you don't unnecessarily burn out your burrs when you're working with tougher materials such as steels and stainless steels, and they'll obviously save you a lot of time, so save you a lot of money, keep your lines nice and crisp and clean. That's what you're after. So get that, it's nice and cheap, it's just wax. And then another key thing is get yourself a sort of Dremel accessory guide. Just find the image on the internet, on Google. I'll put the link down in the description below. Get that, print that out, laminate it, or stick it up on the wall. And it's a good guide to refer to on what burr does what with what material. So there's always questions of, will a cutting burr work on stainless steel? Yes and no. The ideal burr to use for stainless steel hard material is a high-speed cutting burr. The teeth are a lot closer together, it works a lot better, but you need to keep your burr lubricated at all times as much as you can with a lot harder materials. So that is a really great guide to refer to, gives you references to all sorts of the accessories that the Dremel have to offer, from obviously the metal work that we do predominantly here on the channel to woodwork, all sorts of stuff, plastic, ceramics, all that kind of stuff. So it's a really, really great thing to have at the hand. It gives you the part numbers. So if you're looking for a particular part, just type that part number in and you'll be able to find the tool that you may need. So if you guys have any questions or comment, please let me know down below as usual. If you don't find me on here that often, hit me up on Instagram. I'm more active on Instagram, doing stuff on there, so find me on there if you've got any questions or comments. And if you're new here, hopefully I've earned your subscription. For those of you who are returning subscribers, I always and have always really appreciated all the support. The support has been amazing for everybody, and it's nice to have new people come in. I'll be able to teach them as much as I can, and give them the fundamental building blocks to get them moving from not knowing how to do something and to get them started in this journey. It is quite a privilege to do that. So hopefully I've been able to help you in any particular way. So let me know. It's really nice to know those kind of things. And if there's any other questions, again, let me know. I'm more than happy to help out. Without further ado, I'm going to go enjoy the rest of my day, and so should you. Go and engrave, go have a good time, and we will definitely see you in the next one.